What's up, Michigan? How are you guys doing? The Tesla Summer Meetup 2024. This is wild to be out here. Really cool. My first experience in Michigan, coming all the way out from California. So really cool to experience this lake and really just see the amazing weather out here. I just got back from Texas, and man, does the weather down there suck. So this is like, honestly, it feels like California weather. So, but we're not here about why I'm here. We're here to talk about why Tesla dominates with three amazing speakers. And it's actually cool. Sandy, I've interviewed you a couple times at the takeover, but it's so cool to be where you literally live in the state of Michigan, where, you know, this is where your roots are. So everyone knows who Sandy Munro is from Live Munro. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
We also know, oh God. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
Yeah, I did. I said thank you. That's about it. Don't get me going.
Then we have Brian, formerly My Tesla Weekend, but rebranded as Futuraza. So let's give him a round of applause as well.
Thank you, guys. Whoa, thank you, guys.
And then we have Jordan from The Limiting Factor. Let's give him a round of applause. But obviously, why are we all here? You know, we have such an amazing three speakers today, and we're gonna deep dive into why Tesla dominates. And I wanted to ask this kind of like softball question before we kind of get a little bit deeper. But tell me, you three come from various backgrounds, very diverse backgrounds, and yet you guys are covering Tesla. I mean, Sandy, you're even covering Tesla, even though you have OEMs coming to you to do like research and stuff, and both of you guys run channels on Tesla and talk about the technologies. But tell us what your first experience was when you either heard about Tesla, and then why did you decide to, give it coverage, break the cars down, talk about the stock, talk about the engineering, the battery technology. What differentiated Tesla when you were maybe covering other things, or maybe this was something that you used to like other things, and then next thing you know, Brian, you're running a whole channel on it. So obviously even rebranded. But so just tell me, Jordan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I I learned about Elon Musk in 2015. And looking back, even now, that seems like I was kind of late to the show. But there's a Wait But Why article on Elon and some of the things he was doing, and it just blew my mind, all the different things that he was involved in. And I started investing in Tesla, and around 2020, I was frustrated with the quality of the coverage on batteries. And so I just put a video out. People told me I was stupid. Then I got better, I improved, and then, kind of built the channel from there.
So I've always loved electric cars since electric cars were first really a thing. I've been following them forever, and this little company in California decided they were going to make them. And I was as convinced as anyone that they were crazy and that they were not going to make it. But bit by bit they did, and then there were some podcasts and some shows, and I figured, I'd follow them. And the more I followed them, the more I saw that this was a different story about a different company, and it was very exciting to me. I've had a bunch of YouTube channels before, some more successful than others, and of course I was always watching them. In Jordan's early days, as you'll recall, I was one of his first direct contacts where I said, look, you don't know who I am, but here's like 5 quick things you can do, adjust the camera like this, do something, and he said, huh. So when it came time to ask for an interview, he's like, I will absolutely put you on my list, and I appreciated that. So it was great to watch your channel grow. And so I've owned a 2008 Zen Electric, and if you don't know what that is, join the club. No one does. They were small and slow and terrible, but I loved it. And I got into it. I started covering it because I was seeing wrong things. I was seeing things that didn't make sense. And I figured I could shed more light and bring analytical skills, so I would try to predict when factories were finished, predict production, and I would use unusual metrics to do it. And for any of you who were watching those early videos, you know that a lot of that math actually worked out. So as unconventional as it was. And so that's how I did it.
So I started looking at electric vehicles when we were consulting with General Motors, and There was a guy named Bob Stemple, he used to be the CEO of GM. And he said, we're not going to get anywhere with these electric vehicles because nobody really likes them here at GM. So we're going to put your company, so that's the whole of Munro, we're going to put you in with a guy named, forgot his first name, but Baker. And I need to have this thing actually work. So I worked on we worked on EV1 right up until this guy named Ignacio Lopez showed up. And he was evil, and so I quit. We fired General Motors and moved on. The next thing that happened with electric cars was, you may not know this, but the Model S, the very first one, was designed in the Detroit area, and one of the companies that we work with said, hey, you know what, we want to take your lean design training. So what happened was they came into our facility, I trained them, and then this wild man came in, and he wasn't really in the training per se. He picked up a book, and he ran around and he wanted to know stuff about, we had airplanes, we have a lot of different things. We have airplanes, washing machines, parts of shuttles, parts of bombs and things like that. We get a lot of diversity. And this guy, I mean, he was completely nuts. And I went over to the one guy's name was Dave something or other, and I said, hey, can you put a muzzle on that character? And that would have been Elon Musk. And so we did that, and then the next thing that happened was we had a customer that said, hey, we want you to analyze this car that Tesla put out. It was a Model 3. And so we bought the Model 3, we brought it in, and then that customer, a German customer, which I won't mention, but starts with an A, decided they were going to do it themselves, and now I got this car with nothing to do. So we had already taken apart a BMW i3 that was loaded with technology, and I lost about $1 million because nobody wanted to buy that report. So now we've got this other car, a Model 3, from a company I knew I knew what Elon's name was, and I knew who Tesla was, but I never heard of this car. And the next thing you know, I'm tearing it apart, and I was with John McElroy at the time, and showing off, man, this thing looks like shit. Look at these cracks, look at this weld, look at all the things that I would normally look at. But driving it just blew my mind, because I used to race. And I was really impressed. Then when we got rid of the skin and we started looking inside this thing, I was totally sold. And so I guess that's the genesis of my experience anyway.
Well, I think you all have shared various things about how Tesla has just differentiated itself. Jordan, to you, battery technology, how is Tesla different in general? I mean, they had Battery Day several years back. Obviously we have a lot of EVs. I mean, you go to Europe, there's just tons of EVs on the road. I saw a Neo Power battery swap building. I mean, they're actually a lot more advanced in their ecosystem. I would say is a lot better out there. But from a battery technology standpoint, how are you seeing Tesla continue to differentiate itself, and potentially how does it look against other automakers?
Well, I think the first important thing to note is that Tesla, they can take straw and weave it into gold. They can use batteries from a lot of different suppliers. They're very flexible with their cell supply, which helps, improves their ability to scale. Now, in terms of the 4680 production line, that's, as Elon said the other day at the shareholders meeting, that has the potential to have the greatest manufacturing efficiency of any cell production system in the world. So it's just a matter of, all right, give them time. Let's see how they do with it. But things are going good so far. They're like 7 gigawatt hours per year, which is a decent sized battery plant, and they're growing rapidly.
Brian,
Battery.
How has Tesla differentiated itself? Yeah, Sandy will be right back in a minute.
I need a battery.
But how will Tesla differentiate itself when it comes to its overall technology, how it's approached just building its product and product development? What have you seen? Because you are now, you've rebranded to be more general, right, with all EVs going to Futuraza, right? You're no longer just focused completely on Tesla. But how would you say the product development and, Elon talked about at the shareholder meeting, they showcased, 2 or 3 other products that were covered and potentially unveiled in the next year or two. How have they approached things differently?
So Tesla's a completely different company. You look at some of the older manufacturers, and we were told for years and years that when GM comes along, they're going to flip a switch and they're going to make cheaper, better, faster, more comfortable, whatever, more luxurious cars. And of course, it's not that easy. The real difference is when Tesla and SpaceX are able to attract, and I'm sure many of you know this, the best and brightest STEM graduates. They do a survey every year. Where do you want to work? And SpaceX and Tesla routinely come out number 1 and 2. And that's because these are companies where where a person can work to their highest potential. Yeah, I could go to Audi or Volkswagen or GM, and I could maybe help push the product in the right direction. But you look at Tesla, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you have an idea that can work, bring it up and let's discuss it, and let's maybe this gets into the car tomorrow. And a good example that I saw of that was when Sandy was looking at, I think it was the Model 3, it was the Model Y that had been torn down, and then you saw another Model Y that had been made maybe 6 months later, and how many changes did you see?
Thousands of changes, and not just in batteries, but everything.
And what would that have been at Ford?
Nada. Unfortunately, everything is based on a four-year cycle, 48 months, and then you can implement a change.
That's insanity. So if you're trying to develop a product and you have to wait 4 years to make it better, it's crazy, and that's the big difference.
Yeah.
Sandy, it's actually I'm really glad I came out to Michigan, not only for this event, but just to experience the culture out here. But woo! Michigan's amazing. It's been a pleasure to be out here, especially after coming from Texas. So it's crazy. I was at Starbase and Austin, and the weather was just horrible. But Sandy, you have literally torn down 4 or 5 Teslas, if not more. And you even brought a battery up here. If you want to get into the battery technology, this is the heart and the mecca of legacy OEMs, legacy auto. There's generations of people that live here that their parents have worked at Ford and GM and all these other companies. What has stuck out the most to you? Like, if you were to just summarize everything, and again, you just tore down a Cybertruck recently, and shout out, you got the Easter egg, found your name in the freaking truck, which is insane. But here we are looking at these Cybertrucks. I think there's over 15 here today. Even with this, what do you continue to see in Tesla, and how has the Cybertruck even changed that?
Well, we've been talking about mechanical and electric and electronic things and chemical things like a battery. But actually, the guy that got his $85 billion the other day, he's the reason. Skip all the rest of that shit. Show me a leader. Show me a leader. If you show me a leader, I'll show you success. That's it. That's what it all boils down to. We can babble on about this stuff, but you think I knew about 48-volt systems when I was still at Ford 40 years ago. We wouldn't do it. Why? Well, because that's different. We've been talking about going from CAN bus to Ethernet. Why didn't we do it? Well, that's different. We knew about steer-by-wire. Anybody who's been on a plane, anybody who's been on any commercial plane, I'm looking around to see if there's anybody that's older than I am, and I don't see anybody. But if you flew on a biplane, that would be about the last thing in the planet that you could see where there was a connection between the yoke or the pedals and the ailerons and the flaps and the rudder. It just doesn't happen. everything is steered by wire. And yet, this is basically, there's an audio out there that does it as well, but why didn't we do that? Well, that could cost money. That might be dangerous. Lawyers, let me rephrase that. Let me put it in order. First, Wall Street, then marketing, then finance, then lawyers. That's the sequence you go through if you want to put something new in a car. Now let's look at it with Tesla. Let's see. Elon.
Done.
And by the way, I was going to talk a little bit about batteries, but I had to run and get this battery because this battery is going where? There you go. Okay, Jordan. Jordan is going to take that apart. He's going to cut it all up and unravel it and show you all kinds of pictures. You're going to see lots of stuff. And is Stanford, who is it?
University of San Diego.
University of San Diego. Even better. San Diego is maybe my favorite city on the planet. Anyhow, so he's going to give us all a lesson in batteries later on. But I will tell you only one thing. Here's the difference between that battery and the old battery, because I've seen both lines. So the old battery is a wet cell. The wet cell means that it's got a wet electrolyte and it uses some wet materials to glue the lithium and graphite and aluminum and copper, all these different things in the anode and cathode. All these things are basically wet with toxic, nasty chemicals. And that line is about that long. And the reason for that is because first I have to add those chemicals, then I have to make the battery, and then I gotta suck those things out of the battery, and then I gotta clean the air, and then I gotta take and reconstitute those nasty chemicals so that they don't get into the water stream and things like that. And that's kind of like what you do to make a battery. Now let's look at that battery, which is a dry cell. The line is about a third shorter. Why? Because there is no reclaiming of these nasty chemicals. They're actually, we have cut one of these things up already, and we found it as dry as a bone. Now, I can tell you that that one still has the cap in it, so it's not like, for those of you who've seen some of the other stuff, where somebody cleaned up the top of the battery and you see a whole bunch of little black holes, that released every ounce of nasty shit you could ever imagine into the atmosphere. Those people should be prosecuted, but that's, we didn't do any of them. So that still has the little ball bearing in place, and you should be able to see stuff that we did not. So there you go.
Yeah, we'll put it through its paces.
Good
and
deal.
I have so much to say about this already, because people have sent me like prototype cell cans over the past year or two, and what amazes me is this is not just like a generation 2, they're like a generation 3 or 4 of all these iterations of these cells they've done over the past few years. But this is the second major generation, I would say, based on like the welded top. But I want to say a big thank you to you, because I realize how dangerous it is, how difficult it is, how much time and energy it takes to pull these battery cells out of the pack safely. And yeah, you're doing a great service to the Tesla community and Tesla investor base, because it's really useful information.
Woo! So let me tell you right now that that ain't me. I know a lot of stuff, but I know where to draw the line. So the two guys, Tom Prusha and Al Steyer, are the two guys who teach all of our high voltage classes and tell people not to lick batteries or stuff like that. So there you go. So
It's just going to make them want to do it more.
Yeah, I like that feeling.
Thanks
I
for
just
that
blew
warning.
my tongue off. Yeah, there you go.
So we talked a little bit about, the hardware, the manufacturing. Well, we haven't completely gone into the manufacturing, but just we talked about the hardware and the battery technology. How has software, so this is a question really for the panel, how has software and, with your different perspective, how has software given Tesla the advantage? Kind of broad,
I'll
but,
take it up last.
with each one of your caps, answer it.
Oh, where to start? Like, the new vehicles are very software based. They're, so I guess starting from the ground up, like with the new ether loop wiring system they have, and the fact that they program all of their controllers in-house, it's been a 10-year journey of the hardware and software to get them to the point where they're at now, where they can do an unboxed process. So, yeah, from the general operating software of the vehicle, and then FSD as well. I don't even know where to start on that.
So the crazy thing with software is, I had a chance to talk with a gentleman who worked at, I don't remember if it was Hyundai or Kia. When the first light show came out, they went to his department and said, we want to do a Hyundai light show. Can we do that with our cars? And he said, let me do some digging. We're going to need to first understand what these lights in our car are, because we kind of don't. Then we're going to need to go up to the suppliers and ask them if their components can do it. And if they say yes, then we have to revalidate all the parts top to bottom. It's going to take 3 years and it's going to cost $2 million. And they said, well, that's insanity. We will never, ever do that. But when you have software in-house, good, competent, capable software, not like Volkswagen where they said, hey, what's a good number of people to work on our new program? How about 10,000? FYI, that's the wrong number. It's much too large. What Tesla was able to do when the parts crunch hit, when the supply shortage hit, is they said, hey, we need 10,000 of this. They said, that's gone. It's not available. They said, well, what do you got? And they're like, okay, we've got this. Ship it. Can you use it? No, but we will be able to by the time we get to it. So the chip shows up, and they throw it in the car, and it works because they've rewritten the firmware. They replaced the chips 19 times during the shortage to update and upgrade. 19 times. While the other guys are still going out to bid to find out how much it's going to be to rewrite for a chip that doesn't exist anymore. How do you compete with that? How do you compete with a company that can move that fast? And that's a software advantage that others are trying to get into, and I just don't know where you even start.
So with software, you have to start with hardware. And Tesla develops all their own hardware. And on those hardware, you're going to find chips. And there's several different generation of chips. And one of them is called through-hole. If you take apart any conventional OEM kind of car, I will find hundreds of those through-hole technology kinds of things. I will not find any. I'll find other chips that do have through-hole technology simply because of the heat and stuff like that. But for the most part, I will not find any on a Tesla. So when you start fooling around with software, the first thing you want to do is find out if it can be reversed. And there are people who can crack the code, and they can come back and tell me things like how many lines of code, estimate how many lines of code there may be, or how robust that software is, or how many people may have taken to get the job done. But because Elon Musk is a big fan of vertical integration, the lines of software are minuscule in comparison. So when they do a software generation change, it's not like they're looking at billions of lines of code. It's probably more like a few thousand. That's why they can move so fast. You see, if you hire some big-time consulting companies and pay billions of dollars, well, guess what? They're going to tell you that you should outsource, offshore, all these things. Core competency. Another name that really spells the beginning of the end. And all these guys are doing that. So consequently, at Ford, they have over 300 little black boxes. None of them, not one of them, has Ford software in it. Not one. The software inside those black boxes are developed by the guys who developed the black box. Guess what? Probably only 2 or 3 may use the same kind of code, same kind of language. The rest of them are some in-house cooked up process that nobody can crack. And the reason for that is because they want to keep their contracts. If Ford wants to say, I don't like your software, or sorry, I don't like that box anymore, they'll say, fine, go get another, or try and figure out how to get around it. You can't. Software is a big deal, and that's how things are differentiated now. Who's got the Cracker Jack software? Who's got the software that can make things happen? Where does good software come from? Oh yeah, it comes from Silicon Valley. It does not come from Germany. It does not come from someplace here in New York or something like that. It doesn't happen. You have to have a couple of things in place. Good leadership, and that's Elon. A good plan, and that's the Tesla plan. And you have to have good circuit boards with chips that are available and modern. And then you have to have vertical integration with your software systems. That's the rollout plan, not, hey, we can get this one cheaper if we just... As soon as you hear cheap, you know there's a problem, because cheap always loses, always. And that's why all those cars that you see outside running around now, regardless of where they're from, they've got, and as long as they're not a Tesla, they've got a serious problem with too many variables. And as Dr. Deming used to say, where there's variation, there's poor quality. And that's the fact. That's where it all comes from. It's not just one thing, it's everything.
How long do you think it would take to replicate that whole stack the way that Tesla's doing it in another company? Because the next generation vehicle is supposed to be 100% in-house controllers, and Tesla's been working on that for about a decade.
I always say that Tesla's 10 years advanced of everybody else. When it comes to software and circuit boards and stuff like that, 10 years. There may be somebody that's working on something that's going faster, but the only companies that I know of that are trying this out are Toyota, Honda, Ford, and maybe, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe BMW. That's it. I can't think of, oh, sorry, Hyundai Kia. Hyundai Kia is like amazing. They may be the one that's closest to the pin. Yeah.
What would you say are potentially new markets and products that Tesla, like, what's the next step? Because we have obviously energy and storage with their power walls and megapacks. We have the full sexy lineup with the Cybertruck now and the Semi, and then eventually the Roadster, and then the robot. But like, is there anything like, whether it's the next car, potentially the next break in technology that they need to execute on that you think will be vital for them to continue to stay ahead? And obviously, thankfully, I think even Elon's mentality is patents are stupid as much as they do it to protect themselves. But what would you say is the next thing that, you know, is important for Tesla to get into or to tackle?
So I was in a physics class and the professor was showing us how to build a nuclear bomb. And a student raised his hand and said, wait, you're showing us how, this can't be legal, right? And he said, of course it's legal, because the difference between knowing how to build one on paper and knowing how to build one in practice is the entire thing. So when Tesla opens these patents, it doesn't mean that the competition will outcompete them. It doesn't mean they'll even catch up. It means Tesla's a moving target. So what is the next thing? Well, we're going to find out on August 8th, aren't we? And yeah, right? And the two things that I'm looking for are autonomy and robots. And what percentage of our lives would be impacted by those two things? I mean, not 100, but real close to it. This would be a shift in the way life is for the likes of which we've never seen before. It would be surplus labor of infinite quality at a low or no price. So that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think the Optimus and full self-driving, those are the big, hairy, audacious goals, corporate speak. And as far as what interests me the most at the moment on the manufacturing side is the unboxed process and making that work. Because in my view, there's a lot of components and technologies that they've been developing over years, and the unboxed process is going to be the culmination of that. Making automobiles the way they should have been made for a long time, but there was too much bureaucracy and stagnation for that to happen.
Well, I would add to that when you look at, what if Waymo decides tomorrow that they're genuinely done, they're level 5, they're ready to license it. It's going to take, and Sandy can speak to this, 3, 4, 5 years to get that into cars that are on the road at scale. And the same with bots. There's 100 companies that are showing real and serious signs of building robots that could be as good as Optimus. But if those guys get done and out and finished a year ahead of Tesla, they still will lose to Tesla. Because Tesla, when it comes to manufacturing and getting product out the door, has capabilities that are seldom rivaled.
I have a slightly different view. So I already know that what we've seen with Optimus is a shadow of what actually is being done. When I was in Austin, Texas, a guy from Tesla showed me something on his phone, a little video, and it was and I should mention, prior to getting into automotive, I was a tool maker. I worked with automation and assembly for a long time. I worked on the very first robots out. I know a lot about robots, and I know what they can and can't do with their hands. And this guy showed me something that was just impossible, really. Robots don't like to use both hands in unison. And this thing that he showed me did. Now, was this an AI program? I'm not sure. But that's not exactly what I think is the next step. I think the next step is to take advantage of the air. I believe it's going to be VTOLs. Now, I went and seen a company last week that pretty much got it nailed. The company is called Joby. And Joby's got a really nice VTOL. It'll carry 5 people 100 miles, and it'll go about 150, 200 miles an hour. That's pretty snappy, not having to drive there. But it's also very cost effective. There's no roads when you go to 3D. There's a whole lot less cost. The battery systems that I've been looking at are a whole lot more advanced even than what Tesla is showing off right now. I just saw something that was as light as a feather, and it was 9 volts, and it was bipolar, and that probably doesn't mean what you think. These things just have to lay on top of each other, and they multiply out the voltage. This is kind of like we're into now something that nobody could ever dream of, with that lighter battery that I looked at, and we look at how can we reduce the cost associated from getting from point A to point B. We figured out that, hey, it's a lot cheaper to drive an electric vehicle than it is to drive an internal combustion. What happens now if we find out that these VTOLs have just as much capability as far as self-driving as what your modern Tesla does. And on top of that, I can get from point A to point B in record time. I believe that VTOLs are the next thing, that's the next big thing as far as I'm concerned. So.
On the other spectrum now, what would you say are Tesla's biggest challenges? I mean, thankfully they obviously recently had a reduction in their staff as they're adapting into obviously robotics and autonomy even further. And it's not abnormal. I feel like that happens every couple of years with them. So they continue to stay small and lean, but what would you say is the biggest challenge?
So I would say it's not just normal for them, it's normal in a lot of industries and a lot of businesses. A 10% cut, I've seen it happen at companies that were doing well in good times. After the staff of X was reduced by half or more, a lot of the Silicon Valley companies, 80% looked at it and said, if they can drop by 80% and they've had 3 hiccups in a week, that's a miracle. So then we saw massive layoffs from Google and Apple and all the others. And those companies continue to do well or do terribly regardless. So in terms of the layoffs, it's not, to me, a big deal. And we've already seen new job postings going up. So what they had to do is figure out, they pulled all the job postings because we don't know who we need and what they're doing yet. Next week we'll know who's in charge of each thing and what we need from there and keep growing. To me, it's not an issue.
I would say it's necessary because
Yeah.
Tesla has to solve thousands of small problems every day, and they want to keep their pace of innovation up, and they don't want to stagnate. And that means sometimes shaking things up. So I'd say that's their biggest challenge, is just continuing what they're doing, because as Brian said earlier, if somebody gets to one of these technologies a year or two earlier, game theory, they're going to have the advantage.
Well, those are interesting business things, but I think the biggest challenge that Tesla and EVs in general have is the US government, the German government, the French government, and pretty much every other government anywhere except for China. I think that the governments have started to figure out that, hey, this electrification thing could harm some of our borders. I mean, the guys that are on the assembly lines now are in for a rude awakening. It's not their fault. Their bosses and their leadership didn't really think that electrification was going to kick in. So I think that really and truly governments are going to be the biggest impediment for Tesla and others. And by the way, all you have to do is look at how many people have jumped on Tesla's back, or sorry, Elon Musk's back, just to make sure he doesn't get his bonus, which was promised to him, and every other damn thing. So it's sad. Yeah, that is the right word, sad. We have a real problem. Government has gotten way bigger than what the founding fathers ever thought it was going to be. So for me, at a flick of a switch, I believe our federal government could turn off Tesla in a heartbeat in the name of stagnation or isolation. And I'm really hoping that the United States doesn't go back to either one of those, but I'm looking at walls being built up to keep other people out. And I think I explained this a couple of times. I can't get Chinese cars into the country so that I can analyze them, critique them, reverse engineer them, and then give that data, or sell that data, to the OEMs. I mean, what are they thinking? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me, but I've never been a fan of government. Did I say that?
You can say that. I think, I want to close with this question. So I come from California, the San Jose area, and I think Tesla, it's crazy that a company like Tesla would even exist in probably the most expensive place on the planet to start a car company. And you think of, Elon always says this, that in the Silicon Valley, the employment's negative because at the end of the day, you're really just stealing employees or engineers from one company to the next, and that's very true. You may be out here in Michigan or other places, as I've heard that there's a lot of generations that have worked at some of these OEMs for generations. In the Bay Area, it's like 2 years is a long time. Obviously, COVID kind of changed that a little bit. But what would you say as far as, through your experiences and again, with your, with the cap of, how you focus through your channels and all that other stuff, how has Tesla just approached engineering differently? Because ultimately, I can't tell you, how many times I've gone to events and, even the people helping out at the merch table at, the Tesla shareholder meeting, you just ask them where they went to college. It's Yale, Harvard, and obviously it comes a lot down to obviously having Elon there, but how is, just their approach, whether it's engineering and if you want to get into other things, just been different? Because I think ultimately that is how Tesla has just differentiated itself, is just having an amazing engineering and really just ruthless mentality. But how is, that kind of just separated them from the rest and approached it differently?
So I worked at a bank. It was a Fortune 500 company, and they didn't want our feedback. They didn't value our feedback. And if you wouldn't mind, please keep it to yourself. They knew which things were broken, which things didn't work, and we know. And at one point, they'd taken a form away from us because it wasn't Y2K compliant, and they wanted us to go back to writing out these long estimates by hand. And I'm not going to do that. So I made an Excel spreadsheet that calculated. They were furious at me for trying to fix things. I was talking with an employee at Gig Nevada, and I said, "Is it true that they ask for your feedback and listen to it?" He said, "No. What's true is they require my input. They ask us every week. They'll say, 'Hey, I don't think we got any suggestions out of you. Do you think everything here is perfect? Because it isn't. What do we need to fix?'" He gave an example of there was a problem where grit from the outside air was getting into a component, and the engineer said, "Well, just add more grease to it." And this was on superchargers at the time when they were being built in Nevada. And the sleeve that went over it, there was grit in it. And they just added more grease. Great, now we've got a abrasive compound instead. Great, thank you. So they shut everything down, brought the engineers from downstairs to the floor, grabbed everybody who touches this product, and said, "How do we fix it?" And within a half hour, they had it fixed, and by the next morning, it was all running. And everything moved so fast there that he was in mechanical maintenance. He took Friday off. He comes in Monday, and he's got a trouble ticket for line, section 26. And he goes, "What the hell is section 26? And he goes over there, and it's a new line that they put together to divert some parts. Out of spare parts they had this wasn't here on Thursday. And so things move that quickly. And that's an advantage that is gonna prove unstoppable until someone else can get on the same page.
Yeah, I think it comes down, the engineering is an outgrowth of the culture. And I think it's question everything, do what's right, tell the truth, even if it hurts people's feelings and upsets them. You have to focus on what the mission and the goal is. Elon's good at painting a bigger vision to move everybody towards.
Tesla has a very flat organization. In most companies, you'll see that there's different divisions. So this guy over here, he works in a motor division. This gal over here, she works in a transmission, and this guy is doing steering wheels and whatnot. Well, and then they've got a supervisor, and then they got a manager, and then they got a director, and then the directors report to a vice president, and then the 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 vice presidents get together, and they chew the fat, and then they'll get to the senior VP. Then the senior VP will talk to the president, and then the president will talk to the CEO. Kind of complicated. at the end of the day, Elon Musk wanders around. How's it going? What's happening here? How's that going? And you don't find a whole lot of managers, directors, whatever. There are some, but the idea is that if you have a problem, you take everybody that happens to be in the neighborhood and bring them together and say, we got a problem, how are we going to fix this? Engineers, all by themselves, without the aid of a lot of supervision, can get the job done. Add an extra layer where somebody feels that they have to somehow, justify their existence, and the best way to do that is by saying, well, that'll never work. Get back to whatever you came from, and that's the difference between Tesla and pretty much every other company I've ever worked at. They allow the engineers to get the job done. They allow the engineers to travel freely from the battery department to the electric motor department, because Munro and Associates made a living out of cross-pollinization or technology transfer, call it what you want. That's what we do. I mean, I helped create a life-saving intravenous pump by utilizing a system that I just was working on a bum. I mean, you can't tell where the good idea is going to come from. So Tesla, or Elon Musk, has figured this out, and he says, well, instead of having 50 different layers of obstacles, I'm going to be a good leader and get rid of the obstacles. And so what you see is, instead of a pyramid that looks like that, they have a pyramid that looks like that. Flattening the pyramid makes things go a whole lot faster. Communication is better as well.
So I know we're going a little long, but I want to share one story. I'm not going to say which Elon company it is, but I recently met an employee of one of Elon's companies, and it was crazy. So to kind of piggyback on what Sandy was saying, this guy was 25 at the time, and he literally had worked at the company for about 2-ish years. He gets an email from someone at the company saying, hey, Elon wants to interview you. And he's kind of like, what do you mean? Like, don't I already work here? And he was just freaking out. Next thing you know, he literally had 15 minutes with Elon scheduled. He was with him for 2.5 hours. Next thing you know, at the end of the interview, Elon's like, hey, you run the whole cybersecurity department at one of our companies. And his VP literally then reported it to him. So it's just like, that's how Elon is. And that is what ultimately is amazing about how Elon runs his companies. He's not scared to shake things up. He's doing it all the times. As you see in the Walter Isaacson book, he has these surges, that will go through just insane, just painful times. But that's what ultimately just will continue to keep, all of his companies ahead. The one thing so we have like 15 Cybertrucks out here, and you, again, recently, so we're gonna end it with this. Sandy, you tore down a Cybertruck. Summarize to us really quickly, like when you've seen the other vehicles, obviously your name wasn't in the other vehicles like it is this one, but when you've seen the other vehicles, like how is the Cybertruck different than the latest Teslas that they're making?
Okay, so first off, there's no comparison, because that truck, the Cybertruck, is loaded with stuff that nobody, doesn't matter whether it's Tesla or whoever, nobody else on the planet's got. Nobody's got 48 volts. Nobody else has got an Ethernet ring. Nobody's got castings the size of that. Nobody has gotten into, all the housings for the copper parts, if you like, for creating flux. They're all the same diameter. That doesn't sound like much, but if you've got a situation where you've got a PM, permanent magnet motor, and an induction motor, and the housings are the same, that's a phenomenal advantage. And then when you start looking at, and from a manufacturing standpoint, there are no motors like that in any of the other cars. And then you start looking even a little deeper, and you start rear wheel steering. Who's got that? I haven't got that on my Model S, and I probably won't get it. I mean, you're not gonna see steer by wire on anybody's car around here except that one. There's no comparison. There's nothing that's on that car that's on any other car. So you got this odd bird over here, and then the rest of the birds are over there. There's nothing the same, nothing.
It might not even be the same species.
Yeah, maybe they're dinosaur birds and this is the real bird. I don't know, but I can tell you right now, anybody that isn't copying everything they can on that as quickly as they can will die. There's a reason we don't have dinosaurs. They couldn't take the heat, I think is what one
Probably ended up in Texas.
told me. Yeah, that's right. You were in Texas. Yeah, there you go. But anyways, no, there's no comparison. None. There's nothing on that truck that I can find anywhere in this parking lot, including the Rivians and I can't tell what that is. Yeah, there's nothing out there.
So I would say that the Cybertruck, I've been assured by some of the smartest dumbasses in the world, is nothing new, and that Teslas are not the best. And the reason why is because other cars have had rear steer before. You can add air suspension to other trucks. You can, if you get a 350, an F350, you can get this kind of torque. And all you have to do is Frankenstein 9 cars together, and you'll find that one has better range, one has better cargo space. Tesla is not the best in one category at a time. And of course, it's not. Every need is different, every use case is different. And so I don't see why the idea of any of these individual things that having existed before would negate the fact that they're all in the one machine. And it is, I mean, we don't have to tell you, it's pretty special.
At the end of the day, every engineer that's worked in an automotive company has thought of, suggested, done experimentation or whatever about all this stuff. Where's the leader? I think I started this whole thing off with, where's the leader? No leader, no innovation, period. That thing's loaded with innovation. Nobody had the balls to put 48 volts in. Nobody had the guts to change it to steer by wire. Yeah, we all knew about it. We all wanted it. But then there's a supervisor and a manager and a director and a junior vice president and a senior vice president and a president and a CEO that has to say yes. Elon says, oh, good idea, and it's done.
Usually in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, sorry.
Jordan, any final thoughts on the Cybertruck?
Yeah, it's set up for the next gen vehicle. There's a lot of technology that goes into that that's necessary for the next gen vehicle. And I think they use that as kind of a test bed, much like they use the Model S as a test bed for vehicles that came after it.
I don't know where she is, but Kelly put this whole thing together. I don't know where she is.
I see her standing in the back. Can you stand, Kelly?
I can't even see her.
Yeah. So,
Oh, okay, well, stand up, holler, and keep away
or
from
yeah,
that
maybe you
pole.
should come out here so we can all clap. for
Yeah,
you.
we really need to thank Sam. Come on over here, Kelly. Come on. Yeah, this is the lady who made all this stuff kind of come together and sweet talked my wife to make sure that, you know, I showed up. So there you go. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you.
Let's give her a round of applause, guys. This is the person that put it all together.
And I want to say a big thanks to Tony for keeping the sound on all day, making it run really, really great. Thanks to the volunteers at the car wash as well, raising good money for the NOAA project.
Anyone in a blue shirt, please stand. And it's okay if you're standing in otherwise, but like all the people in the blue shirt, you guys are the ones that made this happen.
And also thanks to you, John, for coming out, for bringing your expertise, your help, your contact, just your information, because if you don't know, John is the one who put together the X Takeover in California, and it is the biggest and the best of this. This is the best we can do on short notice. You know, 1 year to get ready is a lot, and we couldn't have done it without you, and if you get a chance to go out to San Luis Obispo this year, next month, it's going to be a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of vendors, a whole lot of speakers. Some of the same usual suspects will likely appear. And I thank you, John.